Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through the Browns PUP list and NFI list going into training camp. Now, before we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let this serve as a good reminder that as we get into training camp, there's going to be a lot of news coming our way. On yesterday's video, if you guys kind of enjoy a peek behind the curtain from the creator standpoint, we picked up 32 subscribers. So to all of our new subscribers, thank you guys so much for joining the channel. And if you're not subscribed, do so. Help us reach 35,000 subscribers. The Browns revealed their PUP list, which is physically unable to perform, and the NFI list, non-football injury list. We're going to explain what both of those things mean and look at who's on the list, and I'll give you my reactions along the way. But let's start by going over all 7 names that are unfortunately on either list. Starting with the PUP list, we've got Nick Chubb and Jack Conklin. Not surprised by either one. Sure, I was hopeful, but I wasn't betting on either guy starting the season off, not on the PUP list. Then you got Jed Wills, who's also coming off a knee surgery. I was a little bit more hopeful that he would not be on this list because we did see him every so often during the spring. Ultimately, he still needs some more time, it looks like, to get back to 100%. Dalvin Tomlinson and D'Anthony Bell come out of nowhere. I'm not aware of any surgery either one of those players underwent, so hopefully it's nothing serious, but clearly there's a little bit of concern. Neither player was able to pass a physical to start training camp, so they're on the PUP list. Then you've got the NFI list. That's non-football injury list. I'll explain what both those things mean in more detail in a little bit. But Nyheim Hines, who is still coming off a torn ACL from a boating incident last August, so 12 months ago almost, finds himself on this list. And then Greg Newsome with a hamstring injury. This one also came out of the blue. But let's start with the PUP list, guys. We've got 5 guys on that list. So what does the PUP list mean? You've probably heard this acronym a lot over the last 48 hours. The PUP list, the physically unable to perform list, is used as a roster designation by teams for players entering training camp with a football-related injury. So maybe it's an injury they sustained last season or something they picked up during organized team activities. But the PUP list is for guys who suffered an injury during football operations under the team's umbrella. Now, when you're on the PUP list, you cannot practice. You can participate in team meetings. You can go to the trainer's office, but you cannot practice on the field. You also still count towards the 90-man roster. Now, if you're on the injured reserve list, or IR, you do not count towards the 90-man roster, but you're going to miss some regular season games, not most likely. You will miss some regular season games. Now, you can't be added to the PUP list once training camp starts or gets underway. You can't be added halfway through. Once you practice, you are no longer eligible to go on the PUP list. So that's kind of a breakdown of what it is. It's just used for guys that are coming off of injuries from last season or practices, and they're not ready to roll 100% just yet. Now, when it comes to Nick Chubb and Jack Conklin, I have little concern over either one of these players being on the PUP list. I remember when Jack Conklin was on the PUP list to start the 2022 season. Remember, that's when they opened up the year in Carolina against Baker and the Panthers. And ultimately, we saw him come back for the regular season, played pretty much the entire regular season, and looked really good doing so. So, to me, this was somewhat expected. Sure, it would have been nice to see either player avoid the PUP list, but ultimately, we should hopefully see them sometime during training camp. Now, if either player stays on the PUP list throughout the entire portion of the preseason and training camp, well, they'll go from the active PUP list, which all these guys are on right now, to the reserve PUP list. If you find yourself on the reserve PUP list after roster cutdown day, you then miss the first 4 weeks of the season. Now, we'll get to that in a second, but first, let's talk a little bit more about Nick Chubb. So for Chubb, I think it's still miraculous that we're going to see him at some point in the early goings of the season, and I'm very confident in saying that because of the progress he's made. I mean, we saw him squat nearly 600 pounds just 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty confident we're going to see him on the football field sometime in September. So for Chubb and his timeline, guy underwent 2 knee surgeries, first one in September, second one in November. Fast forward to where we are now at the end of July, I'd say he's not just on schedule, he may even be ahead of schedule given the amount of workouts he's been posting the last few weeks and months. Now, if Chubb were to stay, or Conklin for that matter, on the PUP list to begin the regular season, they have to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. So that would knock them out for the Cowboys, Jags, Giants, and Raiders game. After those 4 weeks are up, a 5-week practice window opens up, and if they are not added back to the active 53-man roster during that 5-week window, they are gone for the rest of the season and placed on the reserve PUP list and cannot participate for the rest of the year. So I'm sure Chubb is eager to run out of that tunnel week 1 at home against the Cowboys, holding the American flag, and that is going to be straight pornography for everyone in Northeast Ohio, and I'd love to see it. So hopefully we'll get Chubb and Conklin back for some time in the first 4 weeks, but if they stay on the PUP list to begin the season, they are out for a minimum of 4 weeks. Now, before we look at the rest of the guys on the PUP list, quick reminder, we're going to have a channel meet and greet Thursday, August 1st at Masthead Brewing in downtown Cleveland, 12 p.m. Eastern. I'd love to see all the viewers, so if you're in the area, you want to stop by for a quick bite or something to drink, feel free to do so. Thursday, August 1st, 12 p.m. Eastern, Masthead Brewing in downtown Cleveland. Now, let's move on to Jed Wills. I've got a slight concern over Jed Wills. Now, he sustained his knee injury a few weeks, 2 months or so after Jack Conklin did. So you would think he'd be a little bit behind in terms of where they should be returning or when they should be returning from their injuries. But you also got to factor in Jed Wills is younger than Jack Conklin, so his body should be able to respond quicker to these injuries. And he has not gone under the knife before for major knee injuries in the past like Conklin has. So those two factors alone, I thought would indicate Jed Wills would make a return before Jack Conklin, but it appears they're not very far apart in their return timeline. So a little bit more concerned on the Jed Wills front, but again, at the end of the day, it's July 24th. We have a long ways to go until week 1 against the Cowboys. We're looking at 6-7 weeks. I'm not going to start looking for the panic button just yet. Now, as for Dalvin Tomlinson, D'Anthony Bell, just completely blindsided. I don't think we saw much of Dalvin Tomlinson during OTAs at all. And then during mandatory minicamp, he, of course, was there like everyone else except for Amari Cooper. But you don't get a good look at the interior defensive lineman during non-padded practices. As for D'Anthony Bell with his shin injury, again, blindsided. Hopefully neither guy is going to be out too long. But I'm just more like fired up and pissed off over the fact that after a season of hell of injuries, the Browns start training camp off with 7 guys on the PUP list or NFI list. I knew Chubb and Conklin would probably be on that list. I was hopeful Jed Wills wouldn't be on that list. Did not see Tomlinson, Bell, or Greg Newsome coming at all. And I knew that we'd probably see Nyheim Hines start off on the NFI list because that was sort of the tone we got back in the spring during all the open media sessions. So half of the guys we kind of saw coming. The other half just came out of nowhere, and it sucks. Like, I know it's July, and I'm probably getting a little bit too worked up over it, but after the season we all went through, I think I would just like to have a nice normal start to the year with no injuries. Is that so much to ask for? All right, before we get to the NFI guys and talk more about all the news today, I do want to tell all of our viewers about our sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you love baseball and want to catch a Guardians game or any other major league team in your area, you're going to want to give Game Time a shot. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer we get to first pitch. Now, one thing I really like about Game Time are their flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats and get on select seats ahead of the game or event. Plus, they offer the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT SPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's talk about the NFI list, guys. So first, what is the NFI list? It's the non-football injury list. those are injuries that guys sustain maybe working out by themselves over the summer. It could be for rookies coming in that got an injury in college football that's still lingering and carrying over. So you'll see a couple of rookies across the league start off on the NFI list if they're still coming back from a late injury back in the fall. So that's where these guys fall under. Or if they have a genuine illness. Marquise Goodwin last year, remember, he was dealing with blood clots. He was on the NFI list. So Greg Newsome, at some point from mandatory minicamp to now, picked up a hamstring injury, most likely working out by himself or working out with teammates. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but the word on the street is it could keep him out for a couple of weeks. I mean, this is not a training camp where you need to get Greg Newsome on the field from the start. He's not a rookie. It's not his first year in the Jim Schwartz defense. So if there is a time where to miss a couple of weeks, I'd rather have it now than in the regular season. So hopefully he can get his body right. But it's a bummer, especially when you just kind of factor in that Newsome is starting to approach that unfortunate territory of Denzel Ward, like Denzel Ward, missing a lot of time. And to a certain level, a lot of this is out of their control. Soft tissue injuries suck, and they just seem to pop up for some more than others. Hopefully this is not going to linger or persist, but it's not ideal to see Greg Newsome deal with a soft tissue injury as early as July. Hopefully that's not something that follows him throughout the regular season. Nyheim Hines, he's on the list as well. Remember what I said earlier. He suffered a boating incident or suffered a torn ACL in a jet ski accident last August. That knocked him out for the entire 2023 season. I'd like to get Nyheim Hines back as soon as possible because with the new kick return rules, there's going to be a lot of growing pains and there's going to be a lot of learning from mistakes and trial and error. And you want your number one return guy on the field when doing so and not standing on the sideline and watching. So most other years, that probably wouldn't be that huge of a deal. But with the new kick return rules, I think it's really important to get Hines back as soon as possible. So hopefully he can bounce back and get back on the field sooner rather than later. Now, with all these injuries, I know this might sound a bit corny, but I have no other ideas. And I'm open to ideas. But we are starting a prayer circle here at the Cleveland Browns Report to banish injuries. So go ahead, like today's video if you want to join that prayer circle because I'm looking for ideas. I thought last year was, going above a team's allotment for expected injuries the Browns picked up. But we're starting this year off with 7 guys on the list. It feels like we're just picking up where we left off last year. Add in the fact the Browns have the hardest schedule this year. That's not a good combination. It's one thing to have a really tough schedule, but if you're healthy, you can combat that. Tough schedule and banged up, that's going to be a season from hell. So let's talk training camp as a whole here for a second. The Browns are going to depart for the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia on Thursday, that's tomorrow, for 7 practices in a 9-day span. Now, they did conduct a walkthrough practice in Berea on Wednesday to kind of gear up for this trip down to White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia for a second year in a row. Their first preseason game, August 10th at home against the Green Bay Packers. But the Browns are starting to join, a bit of a growing trend across the NFL for traveling away for training camp. By my count, I found 6 teams that are going away from their usual stomping grounds for training camp. The Browns leaving their campus in Berea for White Sulphur Springs, Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. The Raiders this year, they're leaving Henderson, I think that's where they do all their practice, Las Vegas, somewhere in that area, for Costa Mesa, California. And they're not even allowed to publicize it because the Rams and Chargers are blocking that since that's their media territory. The Cowboys, as always, they start training camp off and spend much of it in Oxnard, California. The Saints this year, they're leaving New Orleans to go to Irvine, California. They're actually going to move into the Rams' old practice facility. The Rams just got their new practice facility a few months ago. They are practicing, though, at Loyola Marymount in downtown Los Angeles. I'm not really well-versed on LA geography and the distances between things. So, Miami Mac, if you're still watching, maybe you can tell us if Woodland Hills, California is really far from Loyola Marymount's campus. So you can kind of rule that if you want as a road trip training camp. The Chiefs are going, and they have been going for quite some time, to St. Joseph, Missouri. It's only like an hour and change away from Kansas City, but I think it's far enough away where players are going to stay in dorms and they're not going to go back to their homes after practice each day. And then the Bills, they go to Pittsford, New York. It's a little bit outside of Rochester. It's a good hike away from Buffalo and Orchard Park. So another scenario where guys are going to be staying in dorms and whatnot and not commuting from home to work every single day like most other teams do and the Browns do when they return back to Berea. Ultimately, I think you are noticing a trend in teams traveling for training camp because they want to kind of kickstart the team bonding. These are grown men. A lot of them have families. They've got wives. They've got kids. So when practice is over, they go back home to their lives, right? And that does not really create a great environment for getting 90 guys together to kind of start getting the team bonding rolling. Because at the end of the day, I know some people like to believe that football is played with an Excel spreadsheet, but the reality is it's not. It's a brotherhood, and you always hear about when players retire, they look back on their favorite memories and moments, and it's not always about the touchdowns and the great sacks. It's a lot about the bonding moments they had and how the Browns really loved the bonding they had on their West Coast road trip last year. So I'm not surprised that Kevin Stefanski and company want to start that off in July this year and get a close-knit group going into the season. So with all that being said, to wrap up today's video, have you ever been to a Browns training camp practice? They only have 6 open practices to the public this year. I'm going to call the team out. That's kind of BS. They should have way more than 6. There are teams out there that have upwards of 15 open training camp practices. I don't really know if they're planning to roll out a bunch of top secret stuff. They're not the Kremlin. Let people come watch. Fans spend a ginormous amount of money every single Sunday to park, get 4 tickets, get food and drink at a stadium in the NFL. Let them come watch a very cheap, free practice to begin with, but just an overall cheap experience and not have to, fork over an entire week's salary just to come watch a game on Sunday. All right, let's pick a card to wrap up the show. I've got producer Reed with me today. Reed, which card do you want to go with?
Let's go with Jack of Clubs.
Jack of Clubs? I don't hate it. I'm going to go with the 8 of Diamonds. 8 of Diamonds! Let's go!
That's
I felt
huge.
good about that, too. And I'll tell you why.
How the
I
heck?
thought you never get 8s on here.
No.
We don't get a lot of 8s. 8 of Diamonds.
That's
fucking go.
What a Wednesday.
That just starts to hump day right there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go. Enjoy your day. Let's go, Brownies.